Did you know that some white people are liberals and some black people are not liberals? Many such cases. On this Jubilee debate panel, we have not one but two people known to the stream, Stefano Beneblo Esteban Batista II, who I thought had blue hair, but I guess it's the shirt that's blue now. Wearing his merch. I think wearing your merch is a based move, and I respect it. I will not fault someone for doing that. And also, I don't know Alec Gunter's silhouette as well. Destiny has a very recognizable silhouette, so we're going to see Alec Gunter when we see Alec Gunter.
This is the
friend of the stream. All right, we got the lineup here. Okay, we do indeed have. Well, that's Alec Gunter, right there, covered by the T, because he's got his points down to a T.
I was chosen to read the following prompt. White Americans have way more advantages than Black Americans.
I think I'm a rarity here.
It would seem so.
Do white Americans have more advantages because they're white, or do just white Americans have advantages because of historic factors? I think that people want to argue at the end of the day over whether it's because you're white or not. I think that the answer...
I can't even speed up the video because Destiny's talking. God damn it. It's like when you have the YouTube add-on that makes you, like, you have the add-on that adds, like, the country plantation Southern Belle voice, but then you can't do it when my videos are on because then it doubles up and it's too much. You know? Okay, 1.1. We can do 1.1.
Because you're white in the past, and that's how it carries over to today. You know, even in times of the United States history where black people tried to build wealth, you know, with the Tulsa riots and everything, where, this wealth has been destroyed. And something that's upsetting to me is when conservatives talk about how we can't blame the past for what's happening in the present. That is true to some extent. But then the next breath, they'll talk about how important it is to have dual-parent households, how important it is to have a strong family, to have responsibility passed on from parent to child. And we've seen in the past that because of racial issues, that process has been severely disrupted.
The funny thing is that...
Yeah, so there are two ways, I think, to talk about, like, white privilege in America. The one that Republicans are the least likely to buy into is the idea of there being current and active discrimination against non-white people. Obviously there is, but they don't like those arguments. One thing that I feel is a lot more effective is making an inertial argument where you say, okay, let's say that everyone today gets treated equally. Well, that doesn't change the fact that just like 60 years ago, black people were second-class citizens, and that goes like all the way back to slavery and even further beyond. So obviously, like, if your whole like generational family was impoverished and denied rights for that long, people born into wealthy families are more likely to be wealthy. People born into poor families are more likely to be poor. There is still an inertial impact of that inequality on today. Even if you start treating everyone the same, if 10 hours ago a bunch of people like stabbed each other, you know, just because you're not doing the stabbing now doesn't mean that they don't still need medical attention.
Agreeing with all these things is when I did my research when I was younger, which arrived me to my standpoint of being a conservative, because I believed...
Has Jubilee ever reached out to you? Yeah, several times. A few times it just hasn't worked out. One time I was going to potentially debate a bunch of QAnoners and the guy who made 8chan, but it didn't happen because a couple of them refused to get vaccinated, and the company that runs Jubilee has a standard for that.
It was racist, Democrat, liberal ideologies and policies dating all the way back to the 1800s, all the way up to the 1960s, and then the purported big switch. But I think it was more so when Democrats decided to be a bit more cloak and dagger about their true opinions of black people and be more...
So true. I like Alec the side eye.
Secretive and more, oh, we want to help you by, you know, doing these things and seeing them as
doing
inferior.
What things?
Affirmative action, welfare, all sorts of things that eventually ruin our culture and place us where we are now.
So
but I want to get back to the history of it, because we're talking about...
Well, I just want to make sure we're clear. Giving them money hurt them, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yes, giving them, because if your father's out of the home, that's when we give you the money. If you're living in this housing,
so then give them the money while the dad's
rent-free.
Well, then give them the money while the dad's in the home.
If you're working this amount of hours and getting less than this amount of dollars, you're getting money from the government. Yes, it is incentivizing. You're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I don't even know what that means in this scenario, because yes,
you're throwing.
Who is that? Wait, hold on one second. Who is this Chandler person? Does this person have like, this person has like video or something, like a channel or something, right? They have media training. He's been on Fox News. Oh yeah, there it is. The ability and willingness to talk through another person talking to you is usually a pretty good sign of media training. The ability to like keep talking through it.
You want to talk about throwing babies out with the bathwater? Margaret Sanger wanted to exterminate the black race because she thought they were weeds. So yeah, we can literally talk about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. That's what Margaret...
Yep, okay, yeah, 100%. This guy's an empty talking head. He's literally just reciting talking points right now. There's nothing to do with what they were talking about.
saying, or that's what Democrat policies wanted to do to my people. So that's why I feel so strongly about it, because it is these policies that date back centuries that were built off of the death and poverty of my people.
Let's take a breath.
Sure. I'm breathing.
Okay.
So a lot of babies aren't, but I am, sadly.
I don't know.
See, he wants to talk about abortion now. This is a big, like, black conservative thing where they talk as though legal abortion is anti-black because a disproportionate number of black babies are aborted. That's also psychotic. Like, that's completely insane. That makes no sense at all, but they argue it.
I don't know what that means. When I say throw the baby out with the bathwater, you want to completely get rid of welfare, okay? Or at least the I don't want to put that on you, you haven't said that, but the conservative apparatus does, clearly. So giving money to a group of people does not hurt them.
I mean, sure, if you're talking about a lottery, just take money. But
yes.
there are strings attached to that money.
Take all the money.
There are strings attached
to that money. Give them millions.
Money.
Make them all millionaires. I don't care. Giving money to black people does not hurt them.
And that has not happened, though. That has not happened.
What do you mean?
That has not happened.
It
hasn't been a reparations. It hasn't been this or that. It has been a welfare program, French Societies Act, that was built off of the idea of, hey, we get these families split up, we get these people.
So I'm thinking right off the bat, this person, Chandler, so this person is an empty talking head. They will just say anything. They have like an NPC dialogue tree that they run through with very little concern for how it relates to what's being said. And he'll talk over a person relentlessly, like no matter what. Like even if he just talked for like 2 minutes uninterrupted, he'll just continue to talk over you. In that environment, like in that context, what is the best way to handle him? And I think in the early stages of the conversation, I feel like I wouldn't want to. I feel like it would be better to not engage yet. You have to wait, I think, for a hook, because otherwise you feed into presumptuousness a bit, I think.
Let them keep the family together and keep all the money.
I mean, I guess so.
I don't even know what's being talked about right now, to be honest.
I guarantee you,
I guess so.
No way
Why would you not advocate for that?
So in your, I guess, research of like history of this country and everything, do you find like the Reconstruction era and like the failures of like what it wanted to be and then what it ended up being, and then which led into had downstream effects to enter into the Jim Crow era?
I think for the whiteys on this panel, they kind of can't go aggro because they'll automatically look like a stereotypical condescending white lefty. Well, the people most likely to race bait are black conservatives. Like Candace Owens does this like this. Remember that time where she was called out for literally defending Hitler? And she was like, but were you saying that because I'm black? Like literally, like that's their first, because they're disingenuous grifters. They get paid to say shit, you know. They're paid tokens. This guy looks like a Hassan fan. What does a Hassan fan look like?
And you have policies like redlining that influence how schools are funded. The downstream effects of slavery, do you think put black people as generally in a worse off position than white Americans?
I think generation by generation, the effects of slavery have been diluted, but generation by generation, the effects of racism, welfare-based policies, and things of that nature became even more great. So in the 1880s or so, when we had our first black members of Congress, which were indeed Republicans, I think that was a great start.
Okay, yeah, see, again, like, 2,000 years ago, they were Republicans. Yeah, this guy, he's just a chatterbox. He has his talking points, and there's no point in actually talking with him. You have to talk past. Yeah, that's it. You can't talk with him, you talk past him. That's the way you deal with somebody like this. The only things that he has to offer, he memorized before he came here. You want to make direct appeals to simple, you want to be, it's about like simple, common sense arguments. You want him to be like this big chatterbox who goes off, and then you can be like, well, that all sounds nice, but the data says that these things do that, and this does this, and the historical record is clear, so I just think it's simple. Make him look like he's the over-invested one. He's like you basically just want to try to channel the like Chad versus the guy who's talking really fast meme,
for things, but obviously we had terrible things that happened, like the Tulsa massacre, among black people being chased out of their homes by the KKK.
Sure.
All funded by the Democrat Party, all supported by.
See, exactly. No actual beliefs. You can tell with stuff like this.
The Democrat Party.
Well, I need to stop you there. Can you attribute not to the party but to the ideology? Because I think when you think, regardless of whatever the party switch was, traditionally conservative values did not like. That's more aligned with more racist policies in this country. Like very
best way to respond to this, you just hold your hand out and say, you can keep pretending the party switch didn't happen if you don't want, but modern day KKK members both vote and run as Republicans. It's like you can pretend that if you want. Like you can keep pretending that this widely recognized historical fact. 1,500 years ago, the first black senators were Republicans. Yeah, I did know that, actually. And then the party switch happened, which everyone knows happened. So you can pretend if you want, but I'm not engaging with it. Something like that, and then just refuse to engage with that in the future. That's my personal belief as to what would be most effective.
2020s conservatism to 1880s conservatism. Oh, I was loving the 1v4.
So personally, I feel like there's really only one thing that white people have a true advantage over black people with, and it's that white people are less likely to be forced into a box. It happens with black people onto other black people, but it especially happens.
Dude, Alec Gunter's yoked. Holy shit. You know, he's really still. Look how thick these arms are. Oh my God.
With white liberals onto black conservatives, where we are told that we are supposed to think a certain way, be a certain way, and if we're not, then we're called all these names like etc. And the
Jubilee. What did he say?
Worst of all is bootlicker, because I hate when a white liberal tells me as a black man that I'm a bootlicker, because then I ask, whose boot am I licking? Because you're telling me as a white person that me as a black person that I'm licking your boot because I don't think in this box that you want me to frame my mentality in.
Race bait. See, right off the bat, this guy is like, all right, I'm getting the seat. I'm gonna race bait. Let's go.
That to me is real racism, and that's what we need to stop allowing to happen to us, because black people are so quick now to not branch out and to have new ways of thinking or to go into careers like agriculture and these other career paths that.
Wait, is he implying that white liberals putting black people in a box makes them not want to go to like the plantations or something? What the
Black people don't typically get into? It's not because of racism stopping them from getting in there. It's because we're told for so long that you have to follow this path and you have to think a certain way.
Yeah, man. White liberals are always saying shit like, you're black, you can't get into agriculture. Yeah, dude, that's true.
I think America is a great place for a black person. I think I'm an American. Anything that's available to you is available to me and mine.
I've personally never experienced white people having way more privileges than me. Like, I'm sure you could find certain institutions where black people are treated differently, but in general, I don't think.
I'm gonna try not to, and I'm going to see how long I can go without making light skin comments. I'm gonna hold strong over here, okay?
That I've missed out on anything because of being black, and if anything, it's given me more of a voice because people will want to hear what I say now because I'm black. So if anything, I have more of a platform now just on the basis of being a black conservative and saying what's not popular than I would if I was just a white person who was also conservative.
I agree with the Supreme Court's decision to end affirmative action.
I'm not going to start. Someone else can start. Sorry.
I think affirmative action has served its purpose. I think that it was necessary for a particular time, and I think that
I hope Destiny gets to speak in this one. I just want to hear his argument.
every black person knows how to get into college. Every black, I mean, you can pull out the names, the Oprah, President Obama. You can pull out the head of Time Warner was black man, the Forbes was black man. We know what to do now. We don't need affirmative action anymore. And to me, affirmative action is offensive sometimes, especially nowadays, because I have 6 children and 2 boys, 4 girls. And all of them went to Harvard and Columbia, and this one and that one. And it breaks my heart to think that they accomplished that goal of getting into these institutions just because of the color of their skin.
I can definitely say that.
Did you think that? Is that how you feel about your kids? Okay.
It's a lot of tension when you have affirmative action. I remember my first week at the University of Illinois, I was sitting with some classmates and a white student turned to me and jokingly like, hey, Xavier, like, did you just attach a smiley face when you applied for this college? And I started asking what he meant. And he said to me that he was like, you're black. I'm assuming you had decent grades. You could have just attached a smiley face and you would have gotten into the university.
I bet he was a Democrat. Historically, when white people say that the only reason black people are where they are is because of affirmative action, those are Democrats.
So I was livid by that and I went off. I started naming all my accomplishments and I felt so confident only for about an hour, because then an hour later I started saying to myself like, wow, like, did I actually earn my way in here? I started to have this insecurity and I started wondering to myself, did I
actually just put a smiley face? He's like flashing back to his college admission paper and he's like this blurry half memory of him drawing it. And he's
earn this position myself, or did my ancestors' suffering earn this for me?
And too, I've seen it in the sense of like affirmative action taking away from other people who are minorities. Like I had a friend who was Asian and he in high school and he really wanted to go to MIT. That was his dream school. He interned there. He was super like prepared to go there and he didn't get in. And you can only assume that it was because of affirmative action because they have
No, you can't just assume that, actually. I will say I've never been that sold on I think that affirmative action is good. The problem is that it's so difficult to sell people on. I'm generally very in favor of affirmative action on class. And the reason for that is because you can make really strong arguments for it that it's really difficult to disagree with people over. Because once you like racialize the issue, it gets really complicated and people start saying like it's this big argument, very political. But then if you say like, hey, I think that people who came from a poor upbringing should get a bit more of a leg up because they literally, objectively, empirically, inarguably had a disadvantage. And it's like, that's pretty tough for people to argue against. They still do, but I think it's a much better way of pushing stuff. And of course, because black people are disproportionately poor, they would still benefit from that disproportionately, but then they would have to argue against the class point rather than the race point. And I think it'd be an easier way of handling things,
Such a large Asian population that they want to admit other people.
Yeah, I was going to actually argue that it's more racist nowadays because it excludes so many Asian Americans from
the same skin tone. I'm sorry.
Getting into universities who do deserve a spot, and they can't get in because of affirmative action, which, again, like you were saying, was necessary at the time.
Yeah.
But now it's like anybody, if you have the skills to do it, and
holy shit, I'm sorry. Credit where credit's due. Okay, posturestiny, destiture, straight back, posture mogging these fools. He's sitting up like an autist. Yeah, an autist with a special interest in good posture. All right, ergonomics-stiny.
when you're in America, you can get in.
I don't think affirmative action is the worst thing, considering all the different types or aspects of a background you might take into account when somebody's getting into college, whether they were in certain clubs, Boy Scouts, what type of classes they took. That might not be available to everybody. I don't think that factoring in the affirmative action is necessarily a bad thing, but I feel like because of everything you guys have said, the optics behind it are so horrible today that even if it is slightly beneficial in the long run for certain people, I think we can probably refocus most of that into figuring out like the class that people come.
What the? He stole that from me. He's watched the stream before this video. Pre-watched, time temporal watched, pre-watched, stream sniped even, stealing my shit. What the? I was the first person to think of that, by the way, that class-based affirmative action would be a good and more optically effective way of handling this stuff. I was the first person to say that. He's the second, I guess. Maybe Hassan said it in between me and him saying it, maybe, so he's like the third.
From the neighborhoods, the backgrounds or whatever, without it having to necessarily target race. The only thing that I kind of wonder now that it's gone is instead of a black person being in school thinking like, man, am I here because I'm an affirmative action pick? Is it going to be a kid that is poor or a kid that's from a different zip code?
I think we should do away with all of it. Just like submit an application.
No, I think that's fine, actually. If you're, okay, because the thing that's easy with like poverty, right, is that being wealthy literally, objectively makes it easier to get academic and vocational paths open to you that you couldn't otherwise by hiring tutors or like having access to like a bunch of shit that you couldn't otherwise. So if somebody's like, bro, you're only in here because you're poor. Bitch, you're only in here because you're not poor. Oh, I got a little boost up because of my class-based affirmative action. You got a little boost up from having a nanny.
No demographics. Why do they ask your sexuality? Like, why do they ask all that stuff?
They gather demographic information on students. That's not necessarily affirmative action.
So, if affirmative action accomplished its purpose, why do we still see the disparities that we do in the professional workplace? If you average white wealth and compare it to black wealth totals, white people as a whole have about 50 times greater wealth than black people as a whole per capita. So I just don't understand why you think affirmative action has accomplished its purpose. I don't see
Curious.
that.
Why do you assume that just because there is a disparity means it's because of a racial issue?
No, well, wait, hold on. The disparity is racial. That's empirically the case. What do you mean? He's referencing a racial disparity. How could you? Don't you think it's a bit presumptuous of you to assume this racial disparity is racial? What the fuck do you mean? Good opener by Alec there. Good question to ask.
What else would it be from?
I mean,
it's a racial disparity.
Desire to go, desire to.
I mean, zip code does play a lot. If you grow up in a neighborhood that experiences a lot of trauma, you're not as likely to do as well in school, which means you're.
Why did they grow up in a neighborhood that experiences a lot of trauma?
I mean, lots of people do.
Yes, but why specifically do more black people?
Government assistance programs.
Yeah, that's true, dude. That's true. Why? Did you know the Confederate States of America actually formed in opposition to the affirmative action and welfare programs the United States government was putting through? Lincoln was trying to push forward with all of these like Pell Grants, and the Confederate States in Lee were like, nah, we're not doing that, not here.
Government assistance programs like what?
Try redlining.
I mean, you can go into that if you'd like to, but let's take a
is
look
relevant.
at the great
Redlining wasn't government assistance programs. It was just legal for banks to do that. Those weren't assistance programs. Those were the opposite of assistance programs.
Societies Act, which was created to kick black.
Yeah, I think I just wouldn't talk to this kid if I was in this panel. Like I think I would just ignore him and talk past him every time. He's so fake. Yeah, he's so transparently fake. People like this are really difficult to manage optically, especially because black conservatives race bait like motherfuckers. They love to play the race card. He's 18. Dog, who gives a shit? Have you met a conservative with their 18? Okay, so the average conservative operates on like a 12-year-old brain level. Like, so he's 18, you mean, so like you underestimate him for that? You don't have to be old or smart to be like a heavyweight by conservative rhetorical standards, you know?
Fathers out of the home and get black mothers on welfare assistance. These things aren't beneficial for economics. These things aren't beneficial for actually paving a way for success for black children and black families.
The government loves giving single black mothers money. Historically, that's like the main thing the government likes doing.
I mean, reducing a two-family household to a one-family household isn't going to make them the richest man in the world. It isn't even going to get them out of high school.
Two-family household? I assume they meant two-parent. They have to mean two-parent. Two-parent is the only thing that makes sense there.
Less the ability to even get to college.
You mean
yeah,
two-parent?
The child, yes, but a two-parent household in comparison to a one-parent household, that child is not going to be nearly as successful. That child is more disposed to being sent into prison by doing crimes or not doing.
What the hell is this kid saying? He is referring to one specific welfare discrepancy where there is a slight incentive for the father to not live in the home because the cutoff for welfare for a married couple is not 2 times the cutoff for a single person, meaning that it could be beneficial to not be married or living together in some cases when it comes to welfare payouts. Conservatives fixate on that one like specific up in terms of our like policy and planning and use it as like proof that the government creates all negative outcomes for black people. Of course, that's a very small, like in terms of how much this actually influences the amount of single-family households for black people, it's very, very minimal. It's not like a huge deal. It should be fixed, but it's not a huge deal. But like they fix it on what they can.
Very well in school. So how are they even supposed to get that, that wealth disparity shrunk if they aren't even able to get out of the community that is causing these problems for them?
Something I think that this conversation illustrates is that like affirmative action is literally the very end of the line of a lot of different parts of a person's life. And by that point, trying to rectify all of the inequities that have existed, to try to remedy any of that at the very end with affirmative action, it might just be too broad a brush. And maybe we'd be better served focusing on the earlier issues than trying to throw a kid who maybe, can barely read at a 6th grade level into a college to hope that that's the thing that fixes the problem at the end of the line.
No, I don't think that's the average experience of a black person who benefits from affirmative action. It is generally better to do the work like earlier on though. Yeah, for sure. It's like, I think the research shows that for every $1 that you put into, guys, what's the name of the government assistance program for like mothers and new babies? Is it WIC? WICK? Is that what I'm thinking? Oh, WIC, not WICK. For every $1 spent on WIC funding, the government saves $7 because the outcomes of making sure that young mothers and babies are properly fed is so huge that it causes a bunch of positive downstream effects. Like it's literally printing a money machine because like they're more likely to go to school and be economically productive. They're less likely to get arrested. Like there's a million things downstream that are affected positively by that. And the government just doesn't put more money into WIC because we are a psycho country and we hate people. We hate life. Our country is ruled by demons. But yeah, like investing early is much more effective than investing late. That is definitely true.
I think affirmative action wasn't really supposed to like send kids to Harvard that weren't prepared to go to Harvard. I think that's quite a myth, in fact. I think those that have the qualities to get to Harvard were, before affirmative action, were just completely overlooked. Clarence Thomas is like the perfect example, regardless of what
I'm going to make myself bigger because I am experiencing autoandrophilia, and I just really like how the new glasses shape my face, and I keep looking at the OBS window, and I want to see it like a little larger. This is called self-care. It's called self-love. You could all stand to, all of you low self-esteem beta males could really stand to take a page from this book that I'm currently reading. Thank you.
You think about him. He was able to get to Harvard because of affirmative action, because it focused on finding people that were, again, like just overlooked for those.
But things ended up changing. It morphed into something else. So what started out as a good program of giving all black
So
people.
what you're saying is we should dump $1 trillion into WIC, and then next year we can spend $7 trillion on, I don't know, water park or food. Yes, if we spend the entire U.S. discretionary budget on WIC, next year we will have 7 times that with which to buy military equipment for Ukraine. We will inject $7 trillion worth of military equipment into Ukraine, making it the most powerful force on earth, and then it will conquer Russia. And then we will annex Ukraine as the 51st state, and it will stretch all the way from Poland to Alaska, and it will be called Ukrainia. We'd come up with a new name for it as a state. The sun never sets on the United States of America.
Or people with a lesser chance or lesser opportunity. It started out as that, and then it morphed. And I'm not sure who morphed it, but it morphed into, okay, so now we have to have one black, one Hispanic, one this, one that.
That's not how that works.
But hey, talk to the corporations, talk to the people who hire,
That's not how that works. I don't care. Moving on.
To the board members who say we need to have a woman on the board, we need to have a black on the board, we need to have a Latina, a Latinx, whatever on the board. So it morphed from helping us into now
Tokenization.
Yes. So you have to have one of this, one of that.
Well, when you start with a country where people only hire you if you're white, that's necessary. And I know that you said that it started good and then ended whatever. And I don't think that affirmative action was perfect by any measure, but we still see really, really bad inequality. So if you're going to get rid of affirmative action, what's the replacement?
Meritocracy.
There's no meritocracy in this country. You look at Elon Musk, he's destroying Twitter. There's no meritocracy. That's ridiculous.
Well, first thing,
You have to be careful with statements like that, because if you give them a hook, they'll take it, even though you're completely correct. What's the best hit? The myth of meritocracy is usually used as a way of papering over existing inequality. And I wonder, there are a lot of ways to approach this rhetorically. Obviously, we do not live in a meritocracy, but how do you sell that quickly and in a snappy fashion? I think a good question would be this, okay? If we live in a meritocracy and there are still unequal outcomes between black and white people, what would it take to make you believe that it's not a problem with black people? It's not them making the wrong choices, but is rather something systemic in their way. If we still have unequal outcomes, what would lead you to believe that meritocracy isn't there? No, even that, because they wouldn't answer. They would just pivot off. The one in the white hoodie would just jibber jabber on. I don't know.
I want to bounce back to is it's not a myth that there are like minorities that are being put into colleges that they're not ready for. If you look at a lot of these top universities, including Harvard, Yale, etc., you're going to see a lot of minorities on academic probation because they are being placed in universities that they are not ready for. They are not cut out for that just yet.
Okay, a lot of when that happens is because they get accepted on academic scholarships. Or sorry, wait, not academic, athletic scholarships. There is a phenomena of very athletically talented young men, often black men, due to very complicated cultural forces, where they have their grades kind of papered over, and then they get admitted into a university and get absolutely exploited by the university's football team or whatever, the coach who gets paid $50 billion a second. And they're told no, actually, we need you here. They get sort of encouraged to not attend classes, or they try to have their bad grades covered up for. And in that case, that's not really affirmative action. That's the multi-billion-dollar college sport enterprise, which is hugely exploitative, trying to find the best athletes. But because in order to be a college athlete, you have to be in the college, they just try to pick the best athletes, and a lot of them end up being not academically ready for that sort of thing. That's not affirmative action.
And it even just makes sense if you look at how much they have to achieve in order to get there. Asian students on average have to score 450 points higher than a black student in order to get in the same university. So if you think of the universities that have courses, et cetera, that grade on a curve, you can only have so many people with an A, so many people with a B, etc. So that means that the bottom percentile is going to fail. Who is most likely, just based on logic, going to be the ones failing? It's going to be the people who didn't have the credentials to get there in the first place. And then I have to bounce back to.
I want to get you on that point, because I would posit
the thing with the Asian thing is pretty tough. The problem is if you go over to University of Washington or UCLA or whatever else, any coastal big city college that's pretty well regarded, there are so many Asian exchange students. It's insane. There are so many wealthy families in China or whatever who will raise their kids up and go like, oh, you go to a big American university once you're old enough. And then they go over here. And because the way like the Chinese culture treats their students, they're like boot camp, 6 a.m. wake up, memorize your multiplication table shit. They come on over here and they outperform everyone, and it leads to a situation where like a ton of immigrants are taking up all the spots at these universities, and people who live locally don't have as easy of a time getting in. Now, from a globalist perspective, the idea of, well, this helps everyone, that's not necessarily a bad thing. You would want the people with the highest scores to get in, I suppose, especially to these like relatively elite universities. Though I suppose you could make an argument for brain drain if they all like move back over to China or whatever, but a lot of them stay in America because America is just generally a better country to be in than China if you have the money. It's a complicated issue.
That the people who are least likely to have good outcomes in an academic setting are those who have to work 2 jobs, are those who have to drive there from home because they can't afford a dorm, are those who have to go into crippling financial debt. These are and have other stresses in their life. They can't afford a doctor, they can't afford a dentist, they can't afford anything.
I had to do
so
that too, though.
Those are the
That's
people.
not just black people. It's not just.
But it's
If we're looking at
overwhelmingly
straight numbers, there are more white people in poverty than black people.
If you look at the raw numbers, but if you actually
Literally, again, this person has no mind. Using raw numbers rather than per capita when talking about black versus white, like rather than percentages, a psychotic thing to say. Just bad faith, just absolute nothing person. Garbage human.
I don't know, what are the
understand
wrong
what you're talking
numbers?
about.
No
The
number
issue is
is
poverty
wrong.
in general, though. I don't think it's like who's in poverty. It's like poverty sucks. It
Maybe we
shouldn't
should make
matter
college
who's in it.
free, and maybe we want to have
If you have a
affirmative action
program-
wouldn't be that necessary.
And it'll get even more ghetto.
If you have a program,
A lot of black conservatives are sort of pushed into their position because of survivorship bias. Like a lot of them are people who grew up in the hood and they got, through luck or circumstance or genuine hard work, it doesn't matter, they leave the hood and they think very little of the people they left behind. Now, this kid's 18, so he didn't work his way out of the hood. That would have been his parents or whatever else. But like, oh, making college free, that would make it ghetto. That's racist, dog. I'm not letting you get away with that one because you're not white, okay? That's just flatly racist. As a black conservative laughing that letting everyone into college would make it ghetto, what does that even mean? They're saying that letting blacks into college because black people are more likely to be poor would make it ghetto. Like it's just flatly a racist statement, it's no different than something a white racist would say.
that says if you are under a certain income level, this is how we'll help you. That will overwhelmingly help black people at a far greater percentage than it will help white people.
Trump supports Black lives.
Oh, they're all saying no. Well, one person's saying yes, and it's going to be this one. Even before he took that one step forward, I knew it was going to be this one. Because this person is, again, just an empty talking head. The black guy in burgundy is a PragerU pundit, by the way. They always do this. Never let it be said that Jubilee is like a neutral org, because they do this all the time. They will have, on the conservative side of every single panel, they will have a team of like elite media-trained grifters. And then on the left-leaning side, it varies. Obviously, like Gunter's a streamer, Alec Gunter's a streamer, Destiny, obviously rhetorically proficient. But like it consistently, when I watch these, sometimes I'll see on the left-leaning side, I'll be like, who is this person? And it's literally like a Omega lol who. Like, who the fuck are you? And then on the right-leaning side, we have like PragerU's strongest kill team. We have like an elite SEAL Team 6 of conservative losers who are here with 60 trillion memorized talking points. They do this shit all the time. Xavier Durisso used to march with BLM and was cast for a Netflix reality TV show as a social justice warrior. While attempting to debunk PragerU videos, he was accidentally red-pilled instead. I completely believe this. I totally believe that. He was totally like a Black Lives Matter protester, and then he saw a PragerU video and he was like, I was gonna debunk PragerU videos for my Netflix reality TV show, but yeah. So grassroots, dude. So authentic. So many real people. Wait, Vaush, didn't Destiny vote for Biden? Shouldn't he be on the black conservative side? That's true. Destiny voted for Biden, which makes him black. And he did say that it would be morally correct for rednecks to kill every single BLM protester with machine guns. So that would make him conservative. So technically, he should be on the other side. It's like a Christian conversion story. That's true, yeah. You notice that when when people talk about how like left-leaning people get radicalized, it's usually like this pretty authentic, like, oh, I just had these experiences that led me to question my blah. But then when right people talk about them moving to the right, it sounds exactly like a Christian convert story where they see like Mother Mary burnt in a toast and then they have a revelation as God speaks to them and then instantly they're over on the right, you know? It's always like this super bullshit transparent thing, you know? What's up?
I think that President Trump supports all lives.
Alec, I'm here. I'm here for it, man. What do you have cooking?
That he looks at all American citizens as equal. I don't see him doing anything that would make you feel like he does not support Black lives. That's of course going to lead into the conversation of Black Lives Matter, which was a movement and an organization with so much corruption. Donald Trump not supporting that organization doesn't mean that he doesn't support Black lives. It just means that he doesn't support the fraudulent organization that's stealing so much money from so many people to do absolutely nothing with it.
Literally nobody cares about Black Lives Matter, the organization. The only time I ever hear it brought up is when conservatives bring it up. It's like, oh, by Black Lives Matter, do you mean this one discredited org that nobody talks about? Or do you mean the, like, 100 million bajillion people that marched under a common banner? Oh, sorry, you meant the huge movement that you were obviously talking about? Well, I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about this organization nobody cares about.
Nor does he support a destructive movement that is destroying cities, communities, lives, etc. So
Portland is gone.
Why someone would think that President Trump doesn't support Black lives.
I've heard him say he knows all the best Black people. He has all the best Black friends. I do support Black people all the time. So sorry, that was a very bad impression. But I don't think Donald Trump wants bad things to happen to Black people. So in that respect, I think he does support Black lives. But the other side of that is he's not really doing anything. He didn't do anything as president, certainly, to uplift Black people.
The economy affects Black people.
Yeah, I certainly disagree with that point. One of the biggest things I supported personally. Well, yeah, we'll get into that one later. One of the biggest things he did is he secured.
I have a curated set of talking points that I'm ready to deliver on that subject, but I'm programmed to deliver it later.
Permanent funding for HBCUs, one of the largest increases we ever saw for HBCUs.
By the way, here's a good argument to throw at these conservative Black grifter types, okay? Why the do Black conservatives defend historically Black colleges and universities? That's what HBCU means. Like, they're all anti-affirmative action, but HBCUs are loaded with systems that, like, prioritize the legacy of their Black student population. Like, so, like, why do they pretend to like HBCUs? Because Trump did something to benefit them? Like, why are they defending that, you know?
Done by his administration, among many other things. The First Step Act, which, there's a lot of debate about whether it was really the best thing to do, but that was definitely a kiss of love to the Black race. Freeing Alice Johnson for menial drug crimes she committed in the past that had her locked up. She did not get to see her family for years.
Yeah, but that's not like, okay, I did say I agree. But I agree in the sense that Donald Trump doesn't literally want bad things to happen to Black people, like I think a lot of conservatives do. So I think that he just says the most yeah, I do think that. I think he says the things that will get him elected. So I don't think that he has any personal grudges against most people. He just says the most popular thing. So I think like Ron DeSantis would be somebody that I think actually wants Black people to be hurt. So by that standard, yeah, Donald Trump supports Black lives by leaps and bounds.
You think Donald Trump says the most popular thing?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Then why do so many people hate him?
He got elected as president.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
He didn't win the popular vote. Neither time.
Whoa, wait, is that true? Wait, so you admit it? Yeah, he says whatever is popular with the conservative audience, obviously. There's no way to say, there are no political messages that you can deliver that will get you equal accolades from both sides of the aisle, okay? Andrew Yang tried that, and nobody likes him.
That's what your side likes to say.
That's a liberal talking
I'm
point.
helping you here. I'm trying to see the logic in this. Obviously, he says things to be elected as a politician very similarly to how Joe Biden did, except Joe Biden actually has a history of racism.
Oh, no, Trump is, so to be clear, Trump is racist, for sure. I don't think Trump is personally homophobic or transphobic. He's definitely personally racist, yeah. He has like a long history, racist behavior, very public, very open, not even close.
If he said things that people didn't like, he wouldn't have been our president.
So you like everything that Donald Trump says? You think everything he says is popular?
What? I love a lot of the things he says. I think he's hilarious when he said big water.
Okay, I think that Alex's problem here is that he's trying to riff, but this convo is too insane, you know? Like, the fundamental misconception is whether or not he just says shit that's popular to a conservative audience or whether or not he's popular broadly. And that needs to be like addressed, like quickly cleared up. Like, no, I mean, he says what's popular with his conservative audience. He's hugely popular with American conservatives. I don't mean he's popular to everyone. What does that mean? That doesn't mean I like him, you know? Like, you have to clear that up.
That was one of my favorite quotes. Big water.
Water, big water.
Whoa, Jubilee, you can't edit.
He has the funniest one-liners, so I love a lot of the things he says. As far as policy, he sucks, but...
I'm just shocked you're wearing a Hunter Biden hat. He likes a different kind of one line.
Oh, he's...
That's pretty good, actually. That's pretty good. I'll give you credit where credit's due. That's pretty good. Wonder how long he was cooking that one. Couldn't have been long.
I know, conservatives love talking about his...
No, Coke. It's different. Coke, not
Trump is less of the issue and more so the people that support him, like Die Hard. They facilitate that kind of like hate, I think, for a lot of people, not just black people, but like...
I mean, this man took out like a full page in a newspaper calling for the public execution of 5 black kids. His hotels, all of his businesses have rampant history of denying black people apartments or whatever. So
I forgot about that. I should not have stepped forward.
Look, I mean, Donald Trump cares about Donald Trump. So I don't think he really cares about anyone, I guess, unless you're like super rich or whatever.
When you look at his history on racial issues, whether it's the shithole countries comment, the plethora of comments he made about Mexican people, just the comments he made about Muslims, the idea that Trump...
Remember when he said that a Hispanic judge, an American citizen, a Hispanic judge, should not have the right to rule on a case regarding the construction of the southern border wall because he was Mexican? Like, Trump flat out said, because of this guy's like race or ethnicity or whatever, he should not be allowed to be the judge on this thing. Yeah, he's insanely racist. Trump is incredibly racist. Yeah.
Cares at all about some particular racial minority, I think is a little bit silly. I think Trump will say whatever he needs to say to rile up his base and to get elected.
I don't necessarily think those statements come from a place of hatred. I don't think he was ever saying specifically, oh, if you pray 5 times a day towards the east or towards a mega base or wherever you are, you're a bad person. I think he was saying if you like to fly planes into towers or behead people or throw people off of buildings, maybe you're not the most virtuous person out there.
That was a very controversial statement that Donald Trump got a lot of flack for. Yeah, he said that I think it's bad when people get beheaded, and everyone was like, oh my God, you Islamophobe. I remember that.
I supported Trump because he made the economy good, and so the economy then impacted black people, white people, Latino people. It impacted everybody. But Trump, he didn't think specifically, I don't think, about black people. He thought about himself, and he thought about how...
Okay, I have an economic plan that I'd like to share with all of you. I think that in order for Biden to win not only this election, but every election ever for the rest of his life, which won't be that long, but also every Democrat ever, okay? What he needs to do is every week, he needs to mail every single American citizen a check for $1. And it will have a big, beautiful from Biden signature in the bottom corner, like what Trump did with the COVID stimulus payments, but every single week. And then people are going to be like, dude, I'm getting all this money from Biden. And then they're going to talk about how the economy is amazing. And people are going to go on the news. They're going to be like, I wasn't able to afford the ice cream truck before, but now I can afford the ice cream truck. If I save up for 4 weeks, I have enough for the ice cream. And I think that Biden made the economy great. This would unironically work. I genuinely think this might work. I'm almost not kidding when I say that this would be a strategy.
How can I make America great for me? And making and I thought, you know what? I'm gonna go with this guy. And the reason I'm gonna go with this guy is because if he can make America great and he can make that it rise for everybody, I'm gonna benefit from that. So that's why I went, and that's why I voted for him. That's why I supported him.
How does that specifically benefit black people? Again, he's a businessman, but he's also a racist businessman.
Why does this guy look like an actor? Why am I thinking right now? I'm thinking Back to the Future. Does this guy look like an actor from Back to the Future? I don't understand where I'm getting this. He has like an actor face. I don't know. The nerd dad? Hold on. Marty McFly adult. I'm getting costumes? No, the actor. Wait, no, isn't Marty McFly the kid? Marty McFly's dad. George McFly. Oh shit, dude. Wait, like a little bit? I don't see it? Maybe not. I don't know. Okay, I know I'm reaching because here he looks a bit like the Oppenheimer guy to me. All right, maybe I'm just face blind. Hey, I'll have you guys know that I took that autism facial expression test where you try to test, like, see if you can recognize an expression, and I got 100%, okay? Racist? Yeah, maybe. Against white people.
Man, and like well documented so. So like I just...
and Biden's not? Biden's not.
Yes, he is. He created the crime bill. So that's regardless of the
Well,
point.
just the Central Park 5. That's what you brought up, right? Yes. How do you feel about that?
Well,
he took
actually,
that full page out after they were exonerated.
so I haven't.
He wanted them to be killed,
Well,
executed, just because they were black.
That story.
And he bars people from attending his businesses or like renting apartments from all his like stupid Trump towers.
I think Trump at that point was, like many people in this room, particularly liberals, a victim of the media.
Yeah, I hate the way the media forced him to take that full-page ad calling for the execution of the exonerated Central Park 5, you know?
I think he was scared. I think he was ashamed of the things that he heard in the news and wanted to take action himself as a businessman, not as a racist.
Why are you infantilizing him?
I don't like also real quick because people keep bringing up this comparison.
Oh, good retort from Alec there. That's how you deal with people like this, by the way. Quick retorts, because you don't want to get into a jibber jabber off with them. That's a good like that, you know?
Why are you infantilizing him?
I don't like also real quick because people keep bringing up this comparison to the '93 crime bill from Biden. That crime bill, this was at the height of like violent crime and the crack epidemic in the United States. The Congressional Black Caucus supported that crime bill.
Everyone supported that crime bill. 1993 crime bill Senate vote result. It was insanely popular. 95 yeses to 4 noes, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, and 1 not voting. I'm not saying that the crime bill and the rhetoric around it wasn't racist, because it was. And I'm not saying that Joe Biden doesn't share a disproportionate amount of blame for how that all went down. But like the idea that Biden was like this like lone actor who like slam dunked the crime bill, you know, into existence on his own or whatever, as opposed to it being like an overwhelmingly popular thing. Like, are we going to pretend that Donald Trump wouldn't have approved the crime bill? Like, you know, like, come on.
Everybody in the United States supported that crime bill. The idea that that crime bill was like some racist piece of legislation that Biden was just wheeling out because he hates black people, and that's somehow comparable to the Donald Trump's treatment of the Central Park 5 that were already exonerated, that wasn't a victim of the media. The media said they were done. They were exonerated in court. They weren't there.
As I understand it, the process.
Dark Brandon with the wheelbarrow, with the big box with Sharpie written on it saying racist crime bill, wheeling it into the Senate. He's got his shades on. He's ready.
Prosecutor of the 5, he was a black guy. And so in being a black guy, he went and he looked at all the evidence and said, these guys are guilty.
Black people can also be racist against other black people.
Or just make mistakes.
So if anybody does anything you disagree with in regards to the Central Park 5, even if they themselves are a black person, they're just a self-loathing black person, they're just a racist black person.
If they disagree with me, they're racist.
That prosecutor was doing his job.
The Central Park 5 were exonerated. The idea that there was... the Hitler particles that were on display with the Central Park 5 discourse, it's a whole thing.
That's my policy. If they disagree with me, they're racist.
I think Trump has shown a history of ignorant at best and racist at worst behavior. I didn't vote for him or Hillary because I just don't see him as a conservative hero. I don't even think he's a conservative.
Fake conservative. I voted Trump in 2016, just so you all know. So I'm just saying.
So I need you to elaborate
Ready?
on if people disagree with you, they're racist, just in general.
I was just kidding.
He's just, yeah.
You never know.
Just like
One
the
of those
hat.
kind of moments.
Sorry if I triggered you. I'm sorry.
You made a point. You made a
No.
point
Okay.
a couple of minutes back where you said he just kind of says these things to rile up his base. Why does he need to do that at the expense of black people then?
He doesn't do that I am a member of his base, and I'm sitting there like, oh man, this is amazing. And I don't know, you can call me self-loathing, you can call me self-hate,
so you're
you can call
saying
me
calling
racist.
for the
I'm probably
public
stupid.
execution of 5 black men that were exonerated to
When has
rile
he
up
done
his
that
base?
during the campaign trail? He did.
Sorry. He called for the execution of 5 innocent black boys before the filing date. Sorry, we checked over his papers, and the full page ad. I'm sorry, Central Park 5 Trump full page ad. Sorry, the death ad was it happened before he filed. He wanted the reinstatement of the death penalty. So the exonerated they were all pretty young, right? They're all boys. I think some of them were adults. Black guys could be executed, given up as hostages to a world ruled by the law of the streets, as roving bands of wild criminals roam our neighborhoods, dispensing their own vicious brand of twisted hatred on whomever they encounter.
He didn't do that when he was a politician.
Well,
He did that when he
again,
was a scared businessman in New York.
it's
dealing
everything
bad.
Steve said about the comments about Muslims, the comments about Mexican immigrants. Why does
Never
he
about Mexican immigrants, never about Muslims, about terrorists and about criminals.
He implemented a Muslim ban and he literally said Mexico is sending us rapists. He said Muslims.
And rapists. These are very important delineations to make, and if you believe
No, he did not say he opposed rapists. He said Mexico is sending rapists, which is a very different kind of statement.
Understand?
About,
Or
it's all
I think
Mexican
kid is smart, and he's getting a lot of money probably being an empty talking head. Sometimes people are stupid, but when you see stuff like this guy's not stupid. It's like calling Tucker Carlson stupid. The stuff he says is stupid, but he's not stupid. That's just what you got to do to be a conservative. Smart, but no morals.
Immigrants, I think it's more of you being, oh man, these poor Mexicans, they need to be supported. It's more of that savior complex. Wow.
The race baiting, dude. By calling out anti-Mexican racism, you're doing a white savior complex. Actually, it's like the most horn-rimmed glasses, stereotypical SJW bullshit, but it's being disingenuously employed by black conservatives. They always do this, man.
Wow,
what was the
back
rationale
again.
behind axing or trying to axe DACA? These people were registered with the federal government, they were in school, they were doing everything that they needed to do. They had no home elsewhere. They were brought into this country as minors. Like, what's the explanation for that?
I think that requires more nuance. Like I mentioned before, I think there were some people feeding him bad policy advice, thinking, oh, this will be really good for your base, and he's doing a lot as a president.
That's okay if we feel that way.
Wait, his argument for Trump doing something bad is that he got bad advice and was just trying to do it to appeal to his base? Oh, okay.
If I take responsibility for something, if I say he has responsibility for something, well, then you're right. But if I'm saying, well, maybe there are some people around him advising him falsely, it's infantilizing.
He was the president.
There's no good way
He
to
called the shots. What are you talking about?
The only path forward to solving illegal immigration starts with amnesty for everybody here. The reality is there's some 10 to 15 million illegal.
True and actually based and sensible. It's the only way forward. We could spend $50 trillion tanking our economy and deporting every illegal, or we could have a better economy and make them citizens. Like, it's like choose, Western man. Bankrupt the country in your effort to make everything worse, or improve the country by making things better. Very difficult.
Immigrants here, we're not deporting them all.
With the people who are already here, that's a lot more of a messy, nuanced conversation. But as far as people coming in, I do think we need stronger borders and actual vetting happening.
And I just want to say, in Ronald Reagan's day, he was given the promise. He said, look, if you go ahead and you pass this particular bill, we'll give these people amnesty and we're done. And it didn't happen. We didn't. Illegal immigration continued even after Reagan already said we will give these people amnesty.
Why? What? What? Why would? Do you know how slowly our migrant and immigration processes accept people? There are people on waiting lists that'll last decades. What do you mean? What is the relation? No correlation. No correlation.
So that's why we get a burr up our butt, because he had already done it.
Hopefully the devil's giving him amnesty.
True.
That's terrible.
No, that's base. Thank you.
Tasteless.
Tasteless, making fun of Reagan being in hell. Civility politics bullshit.
Wow.
Ninth circle, baby.
My political beliefs have changed from the past.
Circle, baby.
Steven's in the default pose when you load the model in Blender.
Political beliefs have changed from the past.
I grew up in a conservative household, actually, in Ohio. And my parents were always pretty political, so I always stayed political. I was very religious as a teenager. Sometime during college and then afterwards, especially during COVID, my sister actually indoctrinated me into a more leftist position. And I overcorrected a little bit. I started becoming pretty cringy as far as sit down and let the minorities all talk, right? Don't say anything, don't speak over them, etc. They would, it was like the whole you can't speak over Candace Owens even if she's literally a Nazi kind of thing. So
how dare you say that she defended Hitler in a completely non-Nazi context?
I stand by that. So I kind of leveled out, thankfully, and I'm less cringe now.
Did you? Are you?
I cringed.
Yeah. This is leveled out. Imagine if we would have been here a year ago.
I mean, maybe I am being cringe. Who cares?
No, Alec, that's a common mistake. Don't own that. You say if you want to talk about Candace, we can later or whatever. Don't own that ever, because that's always like a rhetorical that they'll agree with.
So I grew up conservative.
They're so civility pilled. Conservatives are the most disingenuously civility pilled people in the universe, okay? Liberals are actually civility pilled. They'll do that civility bullshit all around the place. But conservatives will literally like screech about how Donald Trump should have succeeded in overthrowing the election and talk about how like everyone who's against them is like a pedophile demon or whatever. And then if you like they'll be like, come on, man, Reagan, you're gonna talk bad about Reagan? That's incredibly distasteful. You're going to talk about how Nancy the throat goat Reagan allegedly sucked off 782 separate members of the Secret Service in one single day, a revolving door that she established in the room next to the Oval Office while Reagan passed out on the desk? You're really going to suggest that? You're really Nancy throat goat Hoover Reagan. I'm sorry. Okay.
But I did have more left-leaning ideas about like Black Lives Matter and critical race theory, and I was watching a lot of YouTube, and you know, I did agree that Black people were oppressed and all of these different things, and that we were kind of got the short end of the stick. And during 2020, when there was, you know, everything crazy was happening, and I started organizing rallies against the mandates because I thought that they were just totally unconstitutional and un-American. And then George Floyd dies. And initially I was like enraged like everybody else.
So wait, she was riled up on the BLM stuff before George Floyd? Like she's saying that she was involved enough in all of that to be with the BLM protests back when it was like Eric Garner and shit? And then she joins an anti-vax okay.
And then it started to become this weird like political like agenda masquerading behind his face. Like it just, the face of what was actually happening started to peel off, and I was like, oh, I mean, I would counter-protest BLM activists at my town square when I lived in Texas, and they were some of the most just bitter, vile, horrible people you could ever meet. Meanwhile, like the Confederate group that would protest there against them also, they were like the nicest people ever.
So, okay, we're doing the, what's her name, Caitlin Burns thing now? Oh, Carolyn Borisenko, yeah, that's it, yeah. I went over, you know, I went down to Charlottesville, and these guys, they had all these colorful flags, and they were pretty all right, you know. They asked me if I was down with Whitey, and I said yeah, and they were like, all right, you good, sister. And there was this guy shouting something about Jews, probably something positive. But then I went over, I crossed the police line, and I went and talked to the other people who were there, and these liberals, and they were all like really mean, and they were shouting stuff, and it hurt my head.
To me, ironically.
I grew up in a Democratic, not a Democratic household, but kind of apolitical, but everybody was Democrat. And then I got a job. And when I got a job and I saw all the taxes come out, and I started looking to the left and to the right and going, oh, my money's whittling away over here. And I said, you know what? After Reagan, I'm just going to go ahead and declare myself a Republican. And I've been a Republican ever since.
My mom is pretty liberal.
That's like the we have like a classic GOP voter right here. I became conservative because taxes. So this lady's just dumb. The mom is probably just dumb, yeah. Just dumb and selfish.
She married my stepdad when I was like 15, 16 in high school, and he's super conservative, like loved Trump, diehard Trump fan. And they had a lot of like back and forth, hearing the two sides, like people who are on such polar opposites just like argue all the time about stuff, seeing that there's a lot of similarities in both sides, like the far radical left and the far radical right. They have a lot of similarities. They just don't want to come and like see it.
I can't read her vibe. I don't know what she's on about necessarily. I don't know what her perspective is here.
Started off actually kind of similar to you. I went to a Jesuit high school. I grew up very conservative. My mom is Cuban, so ride or die Bush supporter, who is now a ride or die Trump supporter. I think the point of my life when I was the most like libertarian was probably the lowest point of my life financially. And I think it's because something that conservatives do really well is they make you feel like you can always like succeed as long as you work hard enough. And that's something that progressives and liberals suck at. That you're a victim of systemic racism, you're black so you're going to be discriminated against, you're a woman so nobody's going to care about your feelings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas Republicans will tell you, listen, if you work hard, you can do whatever you want, like just as long as you're willing to put in the work. And I felt
that's true. Yeah, aspirational messaging is definitely something that conservatives excel at. But delusional aspirational messaging, I remember this because I don't know if some of you guys have I don't know if you guys have heard this. I actually at some point in the past, you know, I may have caught a few of Steven's earlier streams, and I remember like way back in the day, when he was still a carpet cleaner, he was doing this like experiencing what I vaguely remember to be working conditions comparable to that of a Victorian chimney sweep. I mean, he was really suffering. You know, it was proportional to the libertarian bullshit where it's like, okay, all I have to do is like lick a few more carpets clean and I will be able to afford one more ice cream cone, you know?
That way up to the moment where I was losing my house, where I had an ex-girlfriend that was pregnant, where I had been fired from my previous job. There was a whole...
Is this real or memeing? What I just said is true. I don't think he actually licked the carpets clean. I think they had a machine for that.
bunch of horrible stuff going on in my life, and I very, very luckily got into online content creation. And from there, as I started to make more money, I started to pay more taxes. When I get older and I look at taxes that come out of my paycheck, I care a little bit, but it was just so funny to me that back when I was making 15, 20,000 a year, I'm like, I gotta vote for the lower tax bracket, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm barely paying any taxes anyways. And now that I'm older, like if the government wants to take, a few, 10, 20, whatever, how many more $1,000 out.
You just said you worked hard.
I don't think, at the tax bracket he's in, I do not think that Destiny is paying $10,000 or $20,000 to the federal government every year, unless he's got a very good accountant.
I did, but I got very, very, very lucky doing so. Very lucky.
Do you think it's just luck?
It's not just luck, but the difference is that born into a wealthier family, you can make so many more mistakes in life. And when you're born poor, you get like one or two before your life is over. And that's really sad to me.
Yeah, so I used to...
That's true. That's true. It's like, how much can you recover from, right? Like if you if your family is doing well enough that you can make a couple of fuck-ups when you're young and your family is kind of like a cushion, that's not the case for literally tens of millions of Americans. For tens of millions of Americans, if you fuck up, it's like, congratulations, welcome to eternal destitution. You will die here.
Be a liberal. I voted for Bernie Sanders in 2016, as much as I regret that now. My family was pretty left-wing. Some of the people in my family were like radically left, like would refer to white people as blue-eyed, red-headed devils, things of that nature.
So you've gone from being a conservative to a conservative, I see.
And as I got older, I actually started being really outspoken for BLM. I was supposed to be on a reality show teaching people how to be a BLM activist. At the time, I did a deep dive on BLM, and I started to realize all of these lies.
Oh! We're doing the PragerU intro. This is the backstory. This is the bio that you can see on his Pokemon card. I was a BLM activist, and while trying to debunk a PragerU video, I actually saw Dennis Prager explaining why it should be okay to rape your wife, and I got radicalized to the right. Yeah, I've seen this.
So then I took a step back.
It's like, yeah, it's like his character lore, It's like when you meet a new character in a JRPG, and they're like, I was a warrior from my village. Yeah, like that.
Okay, what else am I being lied to about? And I started looking at the Democratic Party and questioning my own loyalty to being on the left.
I personally think both sides tend to be racist in different ways. I don't think the government is on the side of the people in general, and that's just me being, a radical.
When I was young, I used to jump for joy and say, oh yeah, Obama, black president, that's so amazing, he's the same color as me. But when I started to do more research, one of the biggest things I was confused about is, well, why is he a Democrat? What is a Democrat?
You're 18. Obama left office when you were like 11.
I did more research about the Democrat Party, and sure, you guys are going to pop off about the head saying, oh, there's a party switch in the Southern strategy.
Such an empty piece of shit, man. Literally the same, like, talking points.
All these things.
Which is true.
Which you may say is true. I don't believe it is true at all.
No,
I understand, you may think I'm wrong.
You are.
However, one of the biggest questions I had was, why is Obama in the same party as the people that started the KKK, the same people that voted against the Civil Rights Act, the same people that are on the news talking about how black people aren't able to accomplish anything and need to be on welfare and need to be promoted with affirmative action and things of that nature.
I also, in terms of, I guess, of my political journey,
Is this guy from anything? Subscribe to our new Love and Dating channel. Probably not. That's Jacob. Okay, Jacob has an Insta? An Insta with 575 followers. I kind of like the cut of Jacob's jib a little bit, I think. Though this does kind of fit into my thing where it's like all the conservatives have like media training every time. Leah? Is that... Okay, this is the light-skinned black woman married to @Trad Dad Chad, trying to survive clown world. Shoe on Head fan? Oh, you're right. That's like triangulated. Jesus Christ. Oh, and it links to
so if I were
another Jubilee that she was on. Trans versus conservative women.
I was raised conservative, actually. And then high school became, I guess, sort of apolitical. And then throughout...
I like the cut of Jacob's jib. You guys get me, don't you? I don't know. There's sort of like a suffering artist vibe.
College, and I guess just throughout my life since then, I think I guess you can call me a progressive, you can call me, socialist, whatever you, but I guess that's, in the area of where I fall.
Wait, they both have One Piece shirts? I didn't realize Alec had one as well. Did they coordinate that? They're both wearing One Piece shirts? Based.
Said that you were a Bernie fan in 2016, and then you transitioned to being, I guess, more conservative. I guess, I don't know, to me, Bernie Sanders, from what he said to what you think now, what was the shift?
For me, it was socialism, because back then I was a very broke college kid, and I just had this mentality that everything should be free, and I was feeling a bit entitled, like everything should be handed to me because I was black, because I was very much in that mentality. As I learned more about free markets, as I learned more about capitalism,
We're reading more from the back of the sheet. Dude, I wish I could just peer into these people's minds. Nobody works like this. And also the idea of a person who believes in socialism being radicalized by learning about free markets, I'm pretty sure we have literal data on the fact that people who are economically radical almost never get de-radicalized into having a like pro-capitalist position. Once you're anti-capitalist, you stay anti-capitalist, just from different directions. Not every person, of course, but like, you know, it's all such a perfect teleprompter answer. You know, I grew up in a far left family. In fact, all my black people would scream, "We hate whitey, we hate whitey." I was pro BLM and went to college and wanted socialism and for everything to be free. When researching PragerU, I found that the free market was good, and since then I have voted Trump. Like, God, none of you are real. None of you are real.
Started to appreciate that much more. I started to appreciate small business much more, limited government, low regulation.
Yeah. This is definitely how de-radicalized socialists talk. Yeah, that's definitely true. I became really passionate about small business, and also I really got into limited government, and I really began to value the laissez-faire economic system and free hand of the market.
I just started to like that much more. But I would say just more when it comes to economics, I don't agree with him.
Reparations are necessary.
This is going to be a rough one for Al. I already know exactly how this is going to go, okay? They're both going to say, yeah, we should do it. And then the conservatives are going to come in and they're going to be like, why are you being racist by saying that black people deserve things?
When we talk about reparations, I think that doing reparations in the way that a lot of people think of it, where we just give it to black people, I'm not an expert on this, but I think it would be more income-based, and that in itself, like I said earlier, would disproportionately benefit black people, because if you recognize that they are disproportionately affected by a systemic injustice, then doing it on like a class level would uplift proportionally more black people than white people or any other race.
Yeah, I think like mostly like black GIs that were left out of like the New Deal, for instance, that to be able to come back and
yeah, that's a good point. You know, legal discrimination was just a couple generations ago. If there is something that has been stolen from a person or from a family, and that theft has gone like unaddressed, you can sue over you can make cases for wealth belonging to someone else if it was misappropriated to begin with, even if it goes back a while, you know? Like if it rightfully belongs to you. Black people got cut out of so much shit. The GI Bill.
As a white American, as a white veteran, to get a home loan and then build that generational wealth, you could not get that as a black American. So there needs to be, I think, reparations. I don't care really what form it comes from. I think free healthcare, free college, so that everyone has like an equal opportunity to educate themselves, to build a better life for themselves. So it's sort of like, and I think Germany is also a perfect model to follow. You know, by issuing, first of all, a formal apology, which we haven't even done that, but also just like donating to like different funds, and you know, just I think a more equitable society striving for that is reparations in and of itself.
Yeah, I agree. Fulfilling broken promises and like a broad class-based reparation plan with a heavy focus on urban renewal and infrastructural investment would probably go a pretty long way. Yeah.
I have no problems with reparations if they had happened initially during the like slavery or the civil rights movement or any of that. But to try and do that now logistically just doesn't really make any sense. And like, where would this money come from? Like, we're in so much
the government
debt as a nation. Would I get this money? I'm biracial or triracial. Like, do mixed people get it? And like, do Irish people get reparations?
Yes. Thank you.
They were indentured servants.
I think for reparations, if you can find specific instances of somebody being like actually deprived of something, whether specific instances of like the 40 acres and a meal promise, or whether you can find specific cases of like Chinese people building railroads or Irish people, whatever, people being deprived of things.
The GI Bill would be a really easy one for this because we have clear records of black service in World War II. Like, we know exactly who would have gotten the benefits of the GI Bill who didn't. So that's it. That's a very clean, easy one. That's like an empirical case right there. You know, that's why you don't want to really do it on like a skin color thing as well, because you really don't want to get into this like, okay, well, does a person who's 1/8 black get reparated? Like, you want to do like regional, class, or like specific promise-based reparations. I think that's the best way to handle it.
That's okay, but otherwise, yeah, it's a logistical nightmare. There's no possible way that we'd be able to do it well.
Yeah, America's unique because we have bent over backwards for decades now, putting minorities in a position of privilege.
That's so true. I completely agree. One time, I was eating beans out of a Tupperware in the theater when I spilled, because I moved my leg to get at water, and I spilled beans. And then there was this kid, it was this black kid in the rows behind me, who yelled, "This white boy eating beans." And I don't think he could have said that in a society that was not privileging him. You know, I think that came from a place of privilege.
I feel like we have done so much to give back to the communities that were obviously wronged. And I agree with both of you. Like, had this happened a long time ago, I would understand it. If we had specific incidences that we could trace where people were just
I want to point out, by the way, that people have done the math on this. If you were to take all of the wages that were taken from black slaves, like if you were to imagine all the work black slaves did, not even to account for the torture and the murder and the and all of that, but just the work at minimum wage, and factor that in, like, well, how much labor were they not paid for? You know, if you add like all the empirical denial of wealth, to pay that back to the black community would bankrupt the planet. If you were to factor that all in, there isn't enough money on Earth. So when factored against that, we can never do enough. The most we can hope for is to do our best. And we sure as shit haven't. That isn't true, Vaush? No. We even did the math on stream one time. Well, no, hold on. When I said bankrupt the Earth, what I meant was that factors in what I took were standard multiplicative forces of harm done. So, like, if wages are owed, but then there was abuse on top. We did something. I forget the exact. People have done, hold on. How much did slavery cost in How much did slavery in United States cost black wealth? Thomas Kramer said that U.S. slave labor would be worth roughly $5.9 trillion today. Well, that wouldn't bankrupt the Earth, but it would come close. This CNBC estimate says it would be something along the lines of 10 to 12 trillion. Look, the specific amount doesn't matter. I'm just saying it's a lot, okay?
Completely screwed over, I would respect it. But right now, I don't deserve a payment for something my great-great-great-great-grandparents went through, and I don't think that white...
It was not your great-great-great-great-grandparents. Your grandparents were second-class citizens at birth, probably, I assume, in that ballpark.
People are responsible for paying that to me either.
I know we don't want to use the word virtue signaling, but it's sort of like a bribe for a vote in a way, at least in my opinion. In states like California, where they've been throwing around the idea of, oh, we want to pay out this much money to every black citizen in there, in the state, it's like, oh, are you serious? Because this is kind of like a...
That was the city of San Francisco, not the state of California. I think? Did they both do it? I think I remember that being a San Francisco thing.
A joke, in my opinion.
I think that if we impose reparations now, I think it would rip America apart. I think that we're already separated enough as it is, and now you're going to have people walking around going, "You owe me money. You owe me money. I'm not paying you any money."
Biden institutes reparations as part of Bidenomics. All black people are allowed to find the nearest whitey and shake them down for some cash. It is true. That is how that would happen. She's so dumb. Oh God. Yeah.
Would just really rip us apart.
Giving somebody money doesn't mean anything if they don't know what to do with the money or how to handle the money. So if the primary issue in black culture or with black people is generational trauma, then maybe they need more therapy than they need money.
Okay. Even following that logic, Should we pay for the therapy then? Whatever logic there is here, I'm grasping at threads.
Honestly.
Which conservatives are also against.
Well, that's kind of my argument. Like, if there is like that, like generational trauma or whatever, like I think examples of like free healthcare, they could see a therapist and not be, fall into debt. And I think the argument of like the logistical nightmares of it, I think if we
Jesus Christ, don't say racist shit.
want to pay for something in this country, we usually find a way to do it, especially when it comes to the military. So, I mean, we pay for multi-billion-dollar jets all the time.
It's not the dollars, it's who's supposed to get them.
Not to attack progressives, but that is like the most progressive idea in the world. Is like I can see the headlines like reparations voted on in Congress to be paid in the form of free therapy for people in the hood. That just sounds like the funniest thing in the world. But
well, that's true. That's a Kamala Harris guarantee right there. That's true.
I also don't think it's going to come directly from like, white person to black person. Like, oh, your lineage affected his lineage.
It is though. Like in San Francisco, they were going to
San Francisco,
raise the average family, or the average household in San Francisco was expected to pay $600,000 each with the $5 million per black person proposal that they had. And
dude, that proposal was like the biggest gift to the right in the universe, because now a bunch of conservatives can pretend that there was a genuine, actual, serious proposal to ask for $500,000 from everyone. Like, what are you talking about? Okay, Jesus Christ.
To live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I was repulsed by that because you have so many homeless veterans on the streets, and they were going to give black people a home for as little as $1 just for being black. Mind you,
Republicans are great at helping the homeless, by the way. That's why he supports Trump. It's all the pro-homeless policy.
Slavery wasn't even in California. So why?
That's so true, dude. That's so true. It's like me. Like finding the descendants of slaves and going to their house and being like, bro, slaves weren't even in this house. Slaves were in the house next door. Your family moved and has been here ever since, next to the plantation you were owned on. But this house never had any slaves, dog.
That was going to be the case. Like, I don't understand, but it's extremely unrealistic to think that the average family in San Francisco can afford that.
That's because Newsom wants to get reelected.
Okay, but you don't really care.
Governor Newsom doesn't control San Francisco board proposals. That's the governor, and San Francisco is a city that is a different level of government. Oh, man. Stop, chat. Okay, here's the problem with talking about black conservatives, okay? Listen, if you're in chat and you're black, okay, listen, when you're in VGG, you are a VGGer, and that means that demographically speaking, you are a 19-year-old transgender woman, and you are white, okay? I don't care what your skin tone is. If you're in chat, I'm gonna assume you're that, all right? So when you're saying shit about light skins or whatever, I'm hearing this straight from the mouth of the cat, the cat with the pipe bombs. This, when you say shit like, man, this is why I don't f with light skins. This is who's saying it in chat. This is what I read. Just be careful, okay?
About homeless veterans, right?
That's just
you
a
don't support.
idea.
You don't know
I
me.
feel like all your arguments are ad hominem.
But you're
Literally
here as a
every single one ad
You're here as a
hominem.
conservative, so
What
you don't really care
Precisely.
about homeless veterans, right?
That's just
you
a
don't
laughable
support.
idea.
You don't know
I feel
me.
like all your arguments are ad hominem.
but you're here as
Literally
I do think that Alec could benefit from toning the aggression down. He's been pretty aggressive during this, and I don't think that's generally a bad thing. But you don't want to be aggressive in a presumptuous. First of all, that's not an ad hom. Second of all, you don't want to be aggressive in a presumptuous way, because the easiest way for anyone to respond to a presumptuous bit of aggression is to go, that's not me, you're wrong, actually. And even if you're right, they won't own up to it, right? So you want to say, like, if you say, like, oh, well, if only Republicans in general were even remotely good on homeless issues, just anything to that effect. But you don't want to give people the opportunity to go off on that.
every single one ad
You're here as a
hominem.
conservative. So what policies do you support for homeless veterans?
There's ways to address,
Specifically.
for homeless in general.
That's a whole different conversation.
Okay, let's say that we didn't find a middle ground in there.
Yeah.
All right.
It's true. The homeless thing is off topic. So
But that's a great ending note.
White liberals
Destiny talked shit about Alec after this and compared him to you. Well, yeah, we're both taller than him.
have a savior complex.
I agree with that.
Well, I gotta say, this is a shock. I never expected all 4 of you to just come forward and admit it, but you know what? I'm happy with these results.
I just think it's a lot of people, I guess, people, of the left, whatever, can kind of fall into that trap of thinking that, black people as a monolith need to be saved as a whole.
I have no shame about it. I have a savior complex as an older brother, and I will save you whether you like it or not. So
yeah, you have to be careful with stuff like this too. It's like a tone matching thing. The facetious tone can work if there's a kind of rapport, or if you've demonstrated like a back and forth that you can play off of. You have to be able to make them laugh, or at least you have to make it look like they have to force themselves not to laugh. But you have to be careful with that.
That's just me.
Well, it's definitely not, because a lot of us are really just...
Apparently he meant it as a joke? Yeah, of course. Obviously he meant it as a joke. But you're dealing with an opposition here, right? Because now they, who we know operate in bad faith, at least these two do. I think the mom's just dumb. I don't think she's like some crazy conservative grift or whatever. These two are literally like paid talking heads. So they are going to maliciously misinterpret jokes and flippancy against you unless you you align it really, really well. For me personally, I don't have much experience in being in things that get like edited, but I think that if I knew that I was if I knew that I was on something that was going to be edited and cut down, I think I would try my best to avoid jokes in general, because it is so easy to cut around a joke and make something look cringe, even if it isn't. Comedy deals so much in timing, so when other people have control of the timing, you're really leaving it up to the charitability of the producers to keep that all in. All those phrases out of context you have, Vaush? Yeah, well, to be fair, I don't do this. My streams aren't edited. If other people are going to edit my shit disingenuously, I can't stop them from doing that, right? Like, depending on how much you're willing to edit something, literally anything can look bad.
Exhausted of being viewed as our skin color, because when you have this mindset that you need to save black people and we're just sitting here minding our own business and living our lives the way we want to, I don't know why it is that people feel this immense pressure.
See, even though Alec was clearly making a joke, he's like, Xavier is now leading us on this emotional tale of how sick and tired he is of people saying that they're white saviors directly to his face.
To be so apologetic and just always trying to cater and coddle to black people when we should just...
Oh yeah, President Sunday. Jubilee edits the shit out of their stuff. Yeah, they 100%, they tear it apart. They destroy it. You know, obviously, like, rhetoric being what it is, I think that Destiny's strategy of not engaging until he has a thing to say and he says it and he doesn't do much back and forth is the stuff that protects you the most from the editing fuckery, because that way, the only way to cut around what you're saying or doing is to literally interrupt you mid-sentence, which like looks like you've been cut off. Whereas if there's banter or back and forth, it's a lot easier to interject or to cut and leave different impressions, you know? Though that's pretty difficult to understand intuitively. I haven't been on Jubilee. I feel like if I had gone through, if they had me for the QAnon thing, I don't think I would have thought of that. I think that's only something I'm thinking about now. It's not intuitive. You know, there's a reason people pay for media training.
Just want to be treated like everybody else. We're equal for a reason.
I think especially recently with a lot of riot stuff that's gone on or protest stuff that's gone on, people on the left tend to infantilize a lot of different types of protesters, and especially even talking to, you know, some of the other black content creators I do content with, when you hear a lot of progressives come out and say, well, they don't have a choice but to riot or break into the store, or, well, they're stealing, you know, these electronics or shoes for good reasons, you just don't realize it. I think a lot of people kind of look both ways, and it's a little bit weird that there's such a complex on the left to excuse like every single possible negative behavior from somebody, as long as they're a skin color that you're kind of in charge of protecting.
This is definitely a real thing, though I think the extent to which it's a thing is heavily overstated. But it's a real thing, yeah.
I find that very offensive.
Yeah.
I find it extremely...
I see, I wouldn't want to agree with her on this, because this is one of those things where, like, if you acknowledge a small problem or a tendency from some groups on the left, and then over on their side, it's like Democratic plantation shit, where it's actually all left-leaning people. Everyone left of Reagan is actually, like, insanely patronizing to black people or whatever. I wouldn't want to give that impression. I think it's something of an issue, you know. I guess the problem is, from my perspective, and this is probably the case for Destiny as well, the difference is that I guess I'm like emotionally stronger, so it hasn't affected me as much. But like, I deal with such a disproportionate amount of the, like, I guess of like this stereotype of the lefties that comes up, you know what I mean? Like the Professor Flower shit or whatever. I feel like half of the times that my content has been disingenuously framed or canceled or people get mad at me or whatever. It's genuinely like people who hate white people. You know what I mean? Like, because like in my day-to-day life, walking around, talking to people, going down to the cafe to buy a drink, how many people do I meet who hate white people? Like, evidently, in terms of like experientially what I experience, none. Then I go online and there's like a microcosm of the online left that does, and they're obsessed with me. And it's like, but you know, you have to remember that it's like super disproportionate, of course. They hate me because I'm thriving and I'm moisturized, etc. But I wouldn't want to get, like, if I was talking to a conservative, you know, you can say like, oh, there are some like that, but I don't think it's a big deal. I wouldn't want to overstate it.
It upsets me to hear that, because we're just like you. We just have a different skin color, and to hear that you have to help me is offensive to me. I can do it on my own.
Well, we have to break down sometimes why these riots happen. You know, MLK once said that riots are the voice of the unheard. So if you are to address the problem and stop the riots, you have to address the underlying inequality that has historically been pervasive. You know, even if you as individual people are doing fine and you don't want anybody else to get in the way of that, that's cool, and I'm not going to be the one to get in the way. But the disparities are undeniable.
So if you take pride in having like a white savior,
I think that's perfectly good. Oh, dude, he's still pretending that wasn't a joke. That was perfect. That was perfectly good from Alec. And he's going to ignore what he just said. Well, again, it's edited, so in reality, this probably was filmed on a different day on a different planet or whatever.
your complex.
The disparities are undeniable.
So if you take pride in having like a white savior complex, what is it that you think that you're doing to save black people, and what is it that you think that you're saving?
Literally, see, dude. Oh my God, he's so disingenuous. It's like, well, now that you've admitted that you have a white savior complex, you admitted that in seriousness to me, you definitely believe that. Now that we've established that you believe that, can you explain to me exactly what you think I personally need saving from?
Black people from.
I am trying to make the world a better place through whatever means I can. And
but you're doing it on the backs of...
He probably said he was joking and it got cut out of the video. The original, the unedited video of them talking is probably like hours and hours and hours. He probably said it was like, that was a joke at some point, and it's just not in the cut.
Us.
I wouldn't say so.
Yeah, I actually do. I feel like you want to be a savior for, and you.
Oh my God, dude! I feel like this has happened to me before too. If you make a joke and then like all the troglodytes that you're talking to deliberately decide. I don't think it's deliberate with her. I just think she's dumb. Deliberate with these two. Decide they're gonna pretend that it's like real.
Using me to make yourself feel good. That's what I'm
How am
hearing.
I hurting you?
You're not letting me have my own voice. You're not letting me speak.
How? You're speaking now?
No,
You're cutting her off.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I have to.
Yeah. Well, what's happening? I mean, you're speaking right now. You're speaking right now in this particular setting.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're saying is, like, you took it back to riots and so forth, and it makes it seem like the only way that we as black people can.
He didn't take it to riots. Riots were brought up. He wasn't the one who brought that up.
And have a voice is by riots, and then you need to come along and you need to say, okay, poor little black child, let me help you. That's offensive to me. And
What? I also thought it was really racist when Alec did the black voice for 30 uninterrupted minutes in the middle of the Jubilee bit. Yeah, I guess it would be pretty offensive if he did that voice and said that.
And I feel like you're making yourself feel good about trying to help us. And
I also think that, like, when we talk about damage, I think especially when it comes to a lot of the shoplifting stuff that's going on in certain cities, you get a lot of white people that live in nice suburbs saying things like shoplifting is no big deal, that's fine, and then you'll catch YouTube videos of them later on being in a Walgreens in like a shoddy neighborhood, and they're like, man, why is the deodorant behind a locked case? It's very easy to sit behind a gated community and say, oh, well, you know, it's not a big deal, you know, they steal because they have to. Riots are the language of the unheard. I think people haven't read the full context of that quote. When MLK was saying riots were the language of the unheard and you need to address the underlying condition, he wasn't condoning the rioting, he was just understanding it.
Obviously, there are a lot.
This is complicated and somewhat disingenuous for a few reasons. First of all, the Walgreens CEO already admitted that he overreacted to the shoplifting stuff. A lot of the increase in shoplifting comes down to income inequality, people being desperate, and also a breakdown in the social contract. Corporate profits are at a record high, so when people make shit up and say like, well, actually it's like socially harmful because the corporations are gonna, that's not true. Obviously, we don't want shoplifting to be a thing because shoplifting is kind of like an indicator of broader issues, but the broader issues are a bigger deal than the shoplifting themselves. Like, shoplifting and breakage in general, historically, has always been much higher than it is nowadays, now that we have modern systems like, I don't know, surveillance cameras. We're in a very broad context, you know, we deal with it less than we ever have, and corporate profits and income inequality are at record highs. So it's really a matter of like, okay, what are we really looking to address here? That being said, I do agree that there is a small subset of liberals or lefties or whatever. I don't think that we should pretend that it's not an issue. Like, for me, the big thing is the breakdown of the social contract. I don't care so much about the corporate, like, profit angle, or even if a couple of stores close. I think that's regrettable because people lose jobs and so on and so forth. But I think, like, the big issue for me is the idea of people getting so, I guess, disconnected from the idea of civic good that they'll just, like, run in and throw a bunch of stuff in a backpack and then run out. And it's just kind of like this, this like errant, you know, like whatever thing. Yeah, I think that's quite bad. But it's very complicated because you can have real problems that are indicative of other larger real problems, and then you can have corporations overreact to it or put out like misleading messaging. Yeah, complicated. It's complicated.
Bunch of white people that feel they need to be a savior, but I think there's a difference between helping and saving. Like, I don't think I would need to save black people, but I would tremendously love to help and make sure everyone has like equal outcome, or not equal outcome, but at least equal opportunity, which, in my opinion, I feel we do not have in this country.
This is awkward.
I think he's done a really good job, by the way. Jacob, the soft-spoken guy, I think he's done quite a nice job. Yeah, here's a CNN business article. Stores say shoplifting is a national crisis. The numbers don't back it up. Oh, look, Walgreens. Oh, whoa, Walgreens in San Francisco. Hey, have you ever noticed how so many of the fear-mongering talking points about shoplifting seem to center on Walgreens in San Francisco? Like, it keeps going back to that specific, like, set of events, you know? But in fact, the average shrink rate as a percentage of sales dropped to 1.4% in 2021 from 1.6% in 2020, according to the latest NRF survey. That number has hovered around 1.4% for more than a decade. Retailers on average saw a significant increase in organized retail crime incidents, 26.5% in 2021 from the prior year. This refers to large-scale retail theft and fraud by groups of professional shoplifters who conspire to steal and resell stolen merchandise. The NRF estimates that organized retail crime costs companies an average of just 7 cents for every $100 in sales. So this is why it's very, 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 very important to understand the broader numbers when it comes to like fear-mongering campaigns. In a major shift, Walgreens, which said it saw a spike in shrink during the pandemic and cited organized retail crime in its decision to close 5 San Francisco stores in 2021, is backtracking. Quote, "Maybe we cried too much last year," end quote, about shrink numbers, Walgreens finance chief James Kehoe said in an earnings call earlier this month. During its latest quarter, the company's shrink rate fell to around 2.5% from 3.5% of total sales last year, still higher than the industry average of 1.4%, down from a little over 2% a decade ago. So it's not a problem. There is an increase in organized retail crime, to be sure, but framed in a broader context, people do massively overstate the issue, and that's what I want to be careful about.
So I didn't step forward just because I don't want to broad brush all white liberals as having a white savior complex. I have experienced white liberals who do have that, and they're very unpleasant people. But I don't think every single white person who's a liberal or who is an activist for BLM or any of those things necessarily has a white savior complex. I think that there's a lot of white people who genuinely think that black people are oppressed and they want to help, and that's what they're told.
What it seems like to me, when most people have savior complex, regardless of whom they're trying to save, it's like they're taking real pain and real trauma and using that as a way to push this political agenda, but also to alleviate themselves of whatever guilt that they feel unnecessarily. Like, I don't know why a white person today would feel guilty for things that happened decades ago, let alone
not about guilt,
something that happened centuries ago.
I've never seen a white person say, "I personally feel guilty for slavery." Maybe they're out there, but I've never heard that.
Yeah, in second grade when they taught us about slavery, almost every kid in my classroom would spend their entire time looking at black kids in that classroom. How was I supposed to not think, wow?
When I was at my second grade history class, you know, last week, and we were learning about slavery, white people looked at me What?
These people are feeling guilty for something that they have.
Wait. White people. Okay, listen. Learning about the history of American slavery in class and the white people looking at the black people is a time-honored American tradition. Even teachers get in on it, okay? You can argue that it's good. You can argue that it's bad. All I'm saying is, it's American. It has nothing to do with guilt.
No involvement in, and I have no
Every
involvement
kid in
in
my classroom understood the context.
People
so.
hate feeling uncomfortable, and obviously you don't want to feel like the bad guy, and so I feel like it comes from a place of like, oh, well, like, let me make sure that I'm different, and like, I'm showing you that I want to like help you, but it comes across like, I think it can land very poorly.
I'll tell you what, stop it. Stop it. Because what happens is when you put yourself as the white savior, what you do is you elevate yourself above the black person because you feel then like you have to save us. So just stop it. Just treat everybody regular and normal. Just like I would treat you regular and normal, you treat us regular and normal rather than
the white savior joke like single-handedly catapulted this entire discussion in a different direction. Alec reaching into the time stream and yoinking it and it just redirecting the flow.
Trying to save us.
I just got one thing I wanted to bring up earlier about taxes, because you were saying that you had your job and you were talking about how like you get the tax every time and you're like seeing your tax go up. I worked in nursing homes in 2020 COVID. The last thing that was on my mind when I watched 60 and 70-year-olds on their deathbeds suffocating to death was taxes. I was worried about healthcare. I didn't give a shit about taxes in that time. So when I go to work every day, that's what I see. That's what I want to fix.
I see you once again elevating yourself above the rest of us.
What? Elevating yourself? There's like a 70-year-old on a respirator. They're lying down. You're physically above them. What do you mean? What does that mean? What?
And particularly at me, a white man.
Yeah, you're short. What do you mean?
Elevating himself above a black person.
He called me a bootlicker.
That's what
he called me a bootlicker.
Oh no, I triggered them all. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm chilling, buddy.
Yes,
so
you
what
are.
I hope comes out of this
chilling.
conversation is that we're all Americans, and because we're all Americans, we know that America has a bunch of problems, and I think every person here wants to solve the problems, and I think everybody's bringing what they have to the table with their ideas on how to get us to unify. This kind of stuff, right? But you got something in there. Hopefully, I mean, I'm going to give you the benefit.
Yeah, Alec did make himself sort of a target for this derision, I think. Part of it being the jokes, I think, and a lot of it also being the aggressive attitude. I think so nobody's going after any of the other three. I guess if you have 4 white liberals, you know, the loudest one is going to get the heat, and he distinguished himself a lot in that regard. I do think some could be said in the opposite direction. For instance, you know, I think it could also be an editing thing as well. But Destiny kind of quiet here, huh? Every time Destiny said something, with the exception of the way he framed the shoplifting stuff, I don't like the framing of that, but every time he said something, it was a good package, well framed, very difficult to misconstrue. But as a product of that, not many people engaged with him, because why would the black conservatives engage with him when he's packing such a tight 5 there, right? Like why would they go after the strongest statement to tackle, you know? You can run into this problem where in an effort to be as optically effective as possible, you actually come across as not meek, but like you're quieter than you could be otherwise. He should have talked more, I think. But again, it's also an editing thing. God only knows like how much got left on the table. So without knowing that.
Benefit of the doubt that you have something in there that's redeeming about you that would bring all of Americans together. So I hope that we end on the note of American.
UNITY.
I would like to say we're all made in the image of God, and so we're all have our inerrant worth.
That's not true. God is a man. You're something different.
Just because we're made in his image, and we should treat each other as fellow image bearers, not just by the color of our skin. I mean, as Martin Luther King said.
He also did not like capitalism.
I think something that's really challenging, I've definitely been guilty in the past of throwing around the Uncle Tom word. I used to be hardcore progressive. I'm still relatively progressive. But something that I've learned as time has gone on is being a white person isolates you from a lot of the different types of racial struggles that people go through. And those struggles can take a lot of different forms. Not just, you know, was my ancestor a slave, and not just is my culture bad.
Oof, that felt flat. Yeah, so, hold on.
Definitely been guilty in the past.
Like capitalism.
And I mean, as Martin Luther King said.
He also did not like capitalism.
So the problem with interjections like this is that they can't really go anywhere. you're in a direct conversation, like one-on-one, you might have the ability to kind of segue into a topic, but if in the absence of the ability to meaningfully control the group dynamic, which you can do in a one-on-one, but when there's 8 people, you can't really, it just kind of hovers for a bit, and then the lack of engagement to it makes it sound trite. And you have to be careful with stuff like that. This is something of which I am frequently quite guilty, I feel, though I think I've gotten better with it over time. I don't really do much group stuff anymore. I don't do like the big panel shows. And usually when I do the panel shows, when I did the panel shows, it's just like 5 people taking turns yelling at one person, which is valid. That is a gender. But,
I think something that's really challenging, I've definitely been guilty in the past of throwing around the Uncle Tom word. I used to be hardcore progressive. I'm still relatively progressive. But something that I've learned as time has struggled is my ancestor a slave, and not just is my culture bad, but sometimes in the way that, people grow and develop, right? Like, am I actually choosing these political beliefs because they mean something to me, or is it because I'm black or my parents are black? If I speak a certain way, am I betraying my race?
Saved by Destiny. Okay, so the main criticism here is that what Destiny is doing right now is and I can't fault the rhetoric, but he's saying something that nobody is going to bother to argue with because it is both true and inoffensive enough to not argue with. He has carefully tuned his statements so that they are very difficult to argue with, which is rhetorically effective, but it also serves the first purpose it serves really is it makes him look smart. And of course he is smart, but it's not really about fronting a position. This is why I don't respect non-ideologues. I think that if people engage in sort of public political thinking, I think they have to have ideas they want to present, and they have to be committed to those ideas being put forward. You don't want things taking priority over that. Well, it's complicated. Different situations. Sometimes, you might care more about this or that. I'm speaking generally, but you want to be careful, because if you wanted to, I'll tell you a rhetorical secret. Okay, if you wanted to, you can do any debate, or you can do the Jubilee panel or anything like that, and you can come across a very smart and level-headed little boy, even without that much knowledge of the situation or the topic at hand. And you can do that by only speaking when you've got a certified, unimpeachable banger. When you've got something that is so difficult to argue against, either because it's very true, or because it's very inoffensive, or because it's inane, or whatever else, that nobody can really step to it. So people just sort of nod their heads and go, Now, Destiny is not doing the worst version of this at all. He is fronting positions that I agree with here. He stole my idea, for example, that class-based reparations can be good. He stole my idea that, what was the thing at the beginning of the video where I made the joke that he said the thing that I said just before? Whatever I said there, he stole that, definitely. So there are good ideas on the table. But I do also respect Alex's willingness to be forthcoming and direct, because that engagement is a necessary component of being an effective advocate for an idea. You need to have a sort of optical mind tempering an aggressive spirit. Does that make sense? Does everyone understand where I'm coming from here? Yeah, those are my feelings here. Obviously, the conservative side of things was just brain dead blithering, so it doesn't, there's no question the white liberals win over the black conservatives, blah blah. But those are my thoughts rhetorically. I think that Jacob did a really good job over here, mostly because the way he phrased and delivered his messages, it came across, and I don't mean this as an insult, I mean this in a flattering way, it came across as kind of charmingly meek. I feel like he's the he's the kid in class. He's a little bit of a Poindexter. He's got the glasses, but he's got a heart of gold, and he's got something he wants to say. There's something about the delivery there that works. The lady here didn't talk that much, so I can't speak much to that. And then you've got the conservatives, and the conservatives are all blah, 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 blah. I think in the context of this panel, Destiny's approach was smarter than Alex's, even putting aside the execution. Oh yeah, probably. Yeah, for sure. I definitely think it's a good idea to avoid the adversarial banter, especially when the show is called Middle Ground and it's supposed to be about like finding common ground. So if you go there coming across aggressive, I think it's worth noting, and it's worth remembering that when you see the conservatives, usually media-trained conservatives, who go on Jubilee, they almost always do this thing where they are very polite but very easily offended. They're very willing to misconstrue what you've said in order to give them pretext for this, like, a speech on how they don't think what you said is right. They're very easy to rile up, but only riled up in like a wounded way, like you've offended them with your behavior. They weaponize civility politics very, very, very effectively. Media training.
If I am a political orientation, am I a bootlicker? And I think that it's important when you're coming from a progressive point of view to understand that even though there are conservatives that are black people, you have to treat them as individuals and not just come at it with this, like, you're black, you're a conservative, therefore here's like 6 or 7 different slurs that I can use against you, but they're approved because I have to.
I like the blue hair better, personally. That's my real opinion from the panel. Also, Vaush, FYI, when Destiny brought up the toothpaste behind the glass door, he was referring to a clip of you saying you thought it was weird your local store was doing that. Well, that doesn't surprise me. I imagine that many of the things that Destiny thinks, says, does are in some way related to him watching me on stream. That's not even remotely surprising to me. I imagine that that's just a large part of his life, really. Anyway, I think I've said pretty much everything I have to say on that discussion. I think it's probably a good idea to think of Jubilee as a oppositional organization. They're certainly not neutral. The fact that they so consistently have, like, I know that in order to find people of a given political disposition, you're disproportionately likely to find people who have a career in it, but the consistency with which they find, like, professionalized conservatives with the media training, and they usually are on a payroll too. It's not just like random conservative YouTubers, you know? Like, Destiny isn't professionalized. He's an independent live streamer. Alec Gunter, likewise. Myself, likewise. But then it's over there, and Pokemon over there, the bio card on PragerU, where he was a devout communist for the first 23 years of his life until one day he saw Dennis Prager's glorious, beautiful hair and instantly shifted all of his positions over to those of laissez-faire capitalism. You know, it's a deliberate choice, is what I'm saying. Apparently, other liberals wouldn't work with Destiny. They had to cancel multiple previous appearances. I don't know if that's true, and based on what you've been typing in chat, I have reason to believe what you say is bullshit. But it would be funny if that was true, so I will believe it. That's called manifesting. Reality is what I make it. I've found, it's why I don't cover it as often, I've found Jubilee increasingly tedious. I think that the more I do this, the more I lose my interest in performative political engagement. It's why I don't like to go on like talk or panel shows that much. You know, what if we took a lib and a con and we put them in a room together? What wacky things will happen? Well, I don't care. You know, I know what the issues are, but it's difficult to authentically manifest that, I feel.